Some say Africa's golden era is gone. A time when great African kings and queens built their dreams into empires, stretching across the continent and beyond. But we say a new era is upon us. A new set of African kings and queens are on the rise. Driven by the same wealth of character as the kings and queens before them. Building new empires of enterprise with the right partnership. So rise up wherever you are, new kings and queens of Africa. Embrace your full potential and be proud of your heritage.
Good morning or good evening, everybody. Welcome to another experience of the New Africans. I am Ajay the African, and we are here right after the Mother's Day celebration. And I said, let's talk about Mother's Day. And I'm hoping every sister who enjoyed it, who celebrated, and don't matter the age that you are, young, and in our community, we celebrate little girls all the way up to our elders. I seasoned, well-seasoned liberating sisters because of how we see motherhood as a state of consciousness. And with that being said, I said, let me bring on just a few people to be able to discuss that experience of motherhood being a liberating state of divine consciousness. Motherhood is a state of consciousness. It's how you think. It's what you believe. It's not just the process of having a child, but it's understanding the womb-like connection you have with the universe and how it goes so beyond there. And then having that experience inside of a liberation theology, absolutely amazing, absolutely beautiful. And so, intro question, when you think of Mother's Day, do you only think of cards, flowers, candy, or do you think of revolution, resistance, or sacred work?
I can go first. I think that at one point, of course, growing up outside of this community, and as I was a mother before getting into community, I think that it was superficial in regards to just, oh, it's Mother's Day. Let me give you a flower. Let me give you a card. Expecting that from my kids. And I think that for me, I expected that because I grew up not celebrating any holidays. Mm-hmm. So it was like when I got an opportunity, it was like, yeah, I got to make this about me. So very like selfish in a way. But I think after being able to change, kind of my mindset, I think it's all three, the latter. I think it's revolutionary. I think you are resisting because you are protecting and you're uplifting not just your children, but those a part of your community and giving them substance in a world that really tries to break them, especially our Black children, right? And so it's holy work. I always say that in all the work that you do, I say, I'll make a joke that no one gets into the nonprofit. I've been in nonprofit leadership for a long time. And with that, I always say, this is the Lord's work. You don't do this to get rich, right? And I think that with that mindset, I've brought that now into being able to use all of my gifts to figure out how to really mother, not just inside of my household, but those beyond my household. So that could even be with a diaper change, a prayer that I whispered, even the resistance of no, you cannot do this. And I'm telling you no, because I love you and I see where you're heading. So let me get you before that. So all of that type of work is what you said. The question of, is it revolutionary? Is it spiritual? Is it resistance? It's all three, versus just the superficial flowers, and it's truly sacred.
Jawanze, growing and now Jawanze, your perspective. I know because you celebrated Mother's Day your whole life inside the nation, right? How in that process have you ever looked at it beyond just because you said that according to how you went to school, you were thinking different than they were because of the environment in which you grew up in. So did you see Mother's Day always as, "Hey, mommy, I'm gonna draw you a picture," or versus, "No, this is a greater state of being."
Yeah, so yeah, when I was little, definitely just I always would make a cake. You know, it would be like a heart shaped cake that
Hmm.
they'll have us make when we were elementary. So yeah, it was kind of like just giving, just being nice, giving flowers and all that. And but yeah, for me, yeah, I did appreciate my mother growing up since yeah, pretty much cook, clean, wash for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, like definitely I didn't think of it being revolutionary. Mother's Day, I never thought of it that way. But kind of when I saw that video yesterday at
Hmm.
church,
Hmm.
yeah, they gave me a kind of different perspective of how even like it was like 300,000 years ago. I think that's when
Hmm.
Olutuni the video. Yeah, he talked about the first
The first
black
black woman,
woman.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Olatunji.
but yeah, that caught my eye kind of.
Mm.
So yeah, yeah, I'm still even learning about mothers. Like I wish I want to understand like the history now behind it.
Mm.
That
One of the
made me
things, yeah, and,
curious.
and and that's important for us in our community that we sit down and take a look at who we are as a people through the eyes of our narrative of our history, because that's one of the things that Wale
Yeah,
Olatunji will always do. He gives you history according to how we should see it, not versus how they're going to tell it to us, but how we should see it. I know for me growing up, it was always a neighborhood full of mothers. You in the projects, you know what I'm saying, and we didn't see too many dads, and going from house to house. And I tell you straight up, and my sister called me, and just to see how I was doing because my mom passed, um, and I told her, I
uh,
said, I remember the times when the only time I knew motherhood was coming up was when my sister would walk around our rooms and get everybody to sign the card before she turned it over to us. In school you would sit down and they would have you can buy a little plant for like $1, $2 to take a little plant to your mama in elementary school, and she would have the card, and then by the time I got to college and started thinking consciously on purpose, where I realized that I'm walking into a world where I have to deal with myself as, how do I fit in this planet, and what am I bringing to the planet in my college days. And the concept of motherhood and womanhood as being something that needs to be revolutionary, I realized that there is no community, and there was no community in my growing up without a black woman running something, making sure that we were where we were. When it was funny because growing up, I was always Mildred's boys or Hortense kids. Hortense is my grandmama, Mildred my mama, and so that the identity of every child was the identity of your mother. And because of the stock of how the community saw your mother, what stock did she exist in? How did she carry herself? Who did she connect with? What was she doing? Other adults could look at you and by the stock you come out of, who baby that is? Oh, them Mildred's boys. Oh, come here. Them Hortense kids. That's a Hortense grandkids. Really? Hortense? Yeah. You. Come here. I realized that I was a manifestation of everything she represented. And so it was a sense of sacred work, community work. We were the lineage of our bloodline, and so mothers was definitely connected in a way that, real talk, that fathers have not even grown to just yet. not in this new world. Now, in African, yeah, history, yeah, but in this new world, I'll say it. And it's funny, and I talk too much. We got two Y chromosomes and a double X chromosome, and we probably still not enough for the sister sitting in the panel. You know, in liberation theology, God is seen as being on the side of the oppressed. In liberation theology, our faith. How do you see Black mothers embodying that divine alignment in everyday lives? God is on the side of the oppressed. How does mothers go parallel with that experience?
Well, I
Well,
guess
you
I
ready?
guess,
Oh,
I guess that's on me because I hit the mute.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? I could,
That's on mute.
I can, and look,
Yeah,
I can do it. I can.
He's like,
I
you
had it.
answer this first, now, Juma. Okay, so no, I think it's just it goes past surviving oppression. We talk about it when I talk about doing holy work. I could say that I think that it's a part of a ministry, right? You minister through it, so you embody a divine justice by showing up when systems fail, right? When your education system is failing your kids. I know I've been up there plenty of times arguing with people, you know, or advocating in regards to healthcare, advocating when I'm talking to my children about the potential of entering, you know, not entering the criminal justice system. And also, I talk a lot about my 3 children that I have currently, but I have older children that I helped raise with my late husband. And raising 3 Black boys, big Black men. I'm talking about 6'4", 6'5", and 6'1", being the shortest. And just coming from their background of things that maybe the parents did get right, maybe they didn't get right, but also just growing up in that community, I had to learn how to parent differently with them. But that also gave me an understanding of how to parent with my children.
Right.
So that's why it was important for me to be able to find divinity within myself. So when I'm speaking to you, I am taking God's power and speaking love to you. I am speaking life over you, because the world in which this set up is not going to do that. They're going to speak death upon you, right? And so it's creating joy for them. And I think that upholds dignity and within our household, because there has been trauma within it. So how do I bring that divinity into our home so you're not having to be reminded of the trauma, but you can find a place of peace, dignity, and have divine alignment, knowing that you're on the creator side versus what the world is going to do.
Yeah, and I know for me growing up, and again, being a brother, I can't speak of motherhood. I can speak of the experience on how I seen it come through my mom, come through Mrs. Martin, come through Mrs. Keeve, come through Mrs. Bennett, come through Mrs. Knight, come through Mrs. Chambers, come through Mrs. Dunlop, and I can go on and on and on, because it was a community of mothers even in the hood, you know. And I know with my mom, you know, talking about it being aligned with those oppressed, she would press upon us, and her and my grandmother would press upon us being triple times better than the counterpart. I need you to be able to push through it, and sometimes it took a you know, that hard love, where I'm going to sit down and I'm going to run you through the ringer just to make sure you get it. And I know before my mom transitioned, you know, I had to have a stern talk with her, because I needed to understand some things, and I was like, "Yo, Ma, why was you so hard on me? Because my brothers and sisters had it easy." What was it? And she said, you weren't one to conform to the system. She said you had that revolutionary spirit, and you wasn't one to conform. And so, due to the fact that I know that you wouldn't conform, I had to make sure that you understood your capabilities, because you were going to have a rough road coming up, because you wasn't going to bend for nobody. And I was like, hmm? And she said, so now what is your ceiling? And I thought she was trying to start an argument. What you mean, what's my ceiling? I ain't got no ceiling. You know what I'm saying? Anything I put my mind to, I could produce. And she leaned it forward and she said, exactly. She said, I figured out the formula for you. So that way, when you would go out in this world, regardless of what the world was going to tell you what you're not, you were going to have a voice and you were going to have an experience to express who you were called to be. And so she understood that you know, a young black man oppressed, and if you don't join the system, you're going to have to learn to fight. And she said, you're not scared to stand up and fight to become. I was like, wow. And at that moment, you know what I mean? I'm a grown man, kids, you know, and all.
Isn't that crazy how your mother saw you before you saw you? So, yeah.
Yeah,
But,
you almost made me cry. You almost made me cry. I had to turn my head and get it together.
That goes back to the conversation I was having earlier with my cousin. We were talking about my grandmother. And I was talking to her about, you know, no disrespect to any of my family members, but y'all know the truth. You know, her children, hard-headed, right? But she had other children. She had a whole community. You know, they coined her the name of Mother of the Mo, Mother of Fillmore, Western Edition, San Francisco. Shout out to my folks. But I say that because she had that wooden spoon. And it's documentaries, PBS documentaries.
Wait. I'm gonna try to type it up for you.
Of folks talking about her wooden spoon, and it wasn't just normal folks. You got to remember, she's in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and seeing the different changes of her community and being very prophetic of what was happening, more so not just on housing, but all the way around. And having children that fell victim to mental health and many different addictions. And I was telling her that, you know, my grandmother was we looked at her as she was so hard on us because she came with that wooden spoon too, right? It didn't matter. It was
wait, it is Mary Rogers, right?
Mary Helen Rogers.
Oh, I had to put
so bad sister, you know, but anyways, I say all that to say, I was telling her, you know, maybe she said, you know, they just didn't get it right. And I said, well, maybe they didn't get it right because she understood the sacrifices that she would have to make for the next generation to come. She understood what her granddaughter, Najuma, would be. She understood what Claire would be. She understood what her grandchildren would be. And so she made many different sacrifices because she understood, while she was working against the system, how hard it would be for the next generation. So making it a little easier, just a little bit, for us to come behind her, to continue the work, to carry that baton. And I give her so much reverence and you know, bringing her with me in the room in different places that I know that she wanted to be in, and what we're in, or was in. And so that in itself, again, is, like I say, really being kind of a ministerial servant in her own right at that community.
Powerful. And I'm anybody who wanna, and I have real talk, and we're gonna let you go next, Juwanze. Get ready, brother. Everybody who watches the New Africans live stream, I get comments about who was the new sister Najuma. And so to understand this, like you said, you had to be an implant. No. To understand the stock.
Not an implant.
Right. You know, he put it there because, you know, just to have the insight that the sister has, the energy she has. For all of y'all who are watching, because it does get a lot of play through the community, look up her grandmother, Mary Helen Rogers. And it's funny, when we met, she made sure Mary Helen Rogers, you can see the whole presentation on PBS.
Yeah. So it's actually, get it right, it's Mother of the Mo.
Oh, the Mo. Let me get let me edit.
But the district and what it is it's Fillmore, District 7 of San Francisco, Western Edition. And it talks about that particular documentary, talks about the whole historic part of Fillmore. Was really like Harlem for the West.
Right.
So different music, poets. I think, in fact, James Baldwin was actually riding the streets talking about Fillmore, and they have that in that documentary. And so they give the historical, and just to give a little blurb of her, the work that I do now with housing advocacy and making sure that people are following housing laws.
Mm-hmm.
Her organization actually sued HUD for the right to organize. And even though they lost, it created, and the domino effect was, it is now mandated that they have to have certain tenant rights. You have to inform residents of what's going on, all these different things. So shout out to you, Mary. I see you, girl.
Well, Juwan say in liberation theology, God is seen as being and on the side of the oppressed. How do you see Black mothers embodying that divine alignment in their everyday lives?
I mean, just going against the system, even though it oppresses, race, especially the black race. Yeah, sometimes the laws don't align with like what's best for us.
Well,
But being a mother, just fighting through that, it takes resilience, since it's like you fighting a lifelong battle, like in the school system, how just like my mom had to come advocate for me, let's say, had a bad grade, but like, you guys have said that, y'all had the community of Black mothers who would kind of advocate for you guys' success. So, I mean, just the Black women in general, even if like they're not a mother, like I had, in the church, they're not my blood, family, but I still consider them my mother, like Poniola Bio, like my auntie, though we're not blood related. So, I mean, just that
right. Being
it's like,
mothers, but being God is a God to all. So mothers, mother for all.
not just
Right. Not
blood.
just what comes out of your physical womb,
Yeah,
but anything that is represented or connected to your mental and your spiritual womb. Being able to be that, and that's absolutely powerful. And one of the things when you talk about it, in our community, and what I love is when they affected my understanding of motherhood as a state of consciousness, is the fact that we celebrate all ages. All the little girls get flowers. You know what I mean? Everybody gets a gift. Because I was sitting with one of the sisters in World of Akibaland, one of the young sisters, teenagers. She's 12 years old, Lanaya, and I was live streaming church service, and she was sitting there with 7. Right, and that's Fahamivu, who we trying to get Fahamivu on the show. Fahamivu, we need you up here. No, that's not Fahamivu. That's no knees. That's no knees. Right. With no knee, we need to get you up here too. Right. So anyway, she's sitting there. She was holding her, and as she was holding her, I took a picture of it. And so I sat down and I told her before we took her home after service. I said, "Look, I normally shower you with gifts on a regular basis so that you can understand how special you are, even as you struggle up," because she was working through trying to, we working through her grades, trying to get her grades right, so she go to the next grade level. And I said, "So I didn't get you anything for Mother's Day, so forgive me because I've been stretched." And she said, "Well, I'm not a mother, IJ." I said, "Hold up." I said, "Do you remember the picture I showed you with 7? Yeah. And how you go around and how your relationship and you connect to every little child? Yes. Motherhood is already in you. It's in your DNA structure. God placed your concern for every child in the DNA of a Black woman. And so it doesn't matter. Even this is why even most babies, you could be 2 years old and you give a little kid a doll. she automatically switches into that motherly role. I've never seen a little girl just hit the baby head against the stove. Or, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't happen. It's always a tender moment.
Wow, it's crazy. You just said that. My brother happens to have two babies under 2.
Mm.
So one, Yadeti is 18 months, and Michelle is, she was born in January. Math, 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just on FaceTime with them, like maybe 20 minutes before we went live. And Michelle, she's drinking her bottle, and my mom is sitting there. She's, oh, that baby's eating. And the baby dropped her bottle, and she starts crying. Well, she dropped the bottle because the bottle was empty. And here's little Yadetsi. She goes and she puts the pacifier in her mouth.
Mm.
And she
Wow.
and it just melted my heart because it goes back to what you're saying.
It's built
That
in the
being in your
DNA.
DNA, that nurturing spirit, that even at 18 months,
Nice.
okay, she don't need the bottle. Like she knew, but she wants some comfort. Here, let me
Right.
give her this pacifier.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm visualizing that. There is no way you cannot connect motherhood to the Most High, and that's why now that a lot of African sects and communities say it, the Divine Mother. And it is definitely built into a sister's DNA. And now we have. How has your own experience as a mother, or you're going to start this one off, Juwanze, being mothered, reflect in a fight of dignity, safety, and freedom? Being mothered.
Of course, yeah, me being mothered. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
I can, and if you need, I can go if you need to ponder on it.
let me just say, yeah, being, mothered. Yeah, yeah, safety is important because, yeah, no mother. Look, I know you wouldn't want to see, rather being a father or mother, kids being in danger, anything like that. And yeah, you always gonna like I said, you want the best for your kids. So yeah, that's freedom in any yeah, physical freedom. That's like, they say black males probably the most incarcerated race in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was important. Like if black women had, sons, they wouldn't want to see their kids, in a bad place like jail, prison. Um yeah, and dig yeah, dignity wise, you always want you want your kids to have a good feeling about themselves. Yeah. So
Is that
How do
is
you
is
think your mother has like, because I wonder what my children will think, because you're 24, right? So I think
yes.
about Romello, he's 9. And what will it look like in 15 years? Because he's, being raised by this version of his mom and this beautiful community that you've been a part of your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think he will say at the age of 24? I'm not saying I'm like your mom, but very similar as far as taking the initiative to have her children spiritually grounded. What do you think are some of the things that your mom did to keep you safe away from that incarceration system and what you talked about?
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's where I was going. And look, before you start, every time I saw your mother as we were growing up through the church, I would go like this. Because that's my sign language version for Inca.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, but like just having me involved in church, like ushering.
Come on.
Well,
Talk
before that,
about
I started out as an acolyte. So
Okay.
like having me do that just kind of kept me from doing other things. To be honest, like I'll be roaming around sometime, but
Mhm.
just having me involved in church that kind of helped me
Now,
just
was she the influence for you to becoming one of the ushers?
yeah, pretty much, yeah, she was, and the elder on me, yeah,
Mhm.
but
So those
um
things having you participate in the programs in the community that would help shape you to be who you were called to be.
yeah, so yeah, and also just she always had me just like watch make sure you hang with RJ. Like yeah, go to this children's church, stuff like that. Yeah, that kept me kind of safe, and yeah, that's another thing that just helped me out. Yeah.
There was one moment where, because you know your mother's not gonna allow you, I ain't gonna allow you to walk in and represent her any kind of way. So if your tie ain't
Yeah.
right, if your sash ain't right, you know what I'm saying, if your collar not working right, your mama's always wait, okay. Mhm.
I do see
Yeah.
pictures of that.
All the time. She makes and that's and again because that's the dignity part. And then her being there and having you in the community is the safety part. And then the type of community that you're in, that's the freedom part. So she covered all three bases. I know for me, I'll speak on my experience of being mothered in the church because I talked about my mom, my biological, but then my spiritual mother, Fundi. I don't want to, man, I get emotional. Fundi or Labayo Abanessa Mandela. And she asked me one time, oh, Jay, why do everybody always got to say my full name? Because you make sure when people ask you your name, my name is Fundi or Labayo Abanessa Mandela. She, you let everybody know what your name is, and it just flows. But for her, when I came in, um, I would always come to the classes and to every ritual and every experiences a couple of hours before the time. And she ran the nursery, and I would come in, I would read books or play or clean or whatever it was that they needed help with at the end of the day. She said after a while the kids would go crazy waiting for our brother Aj to walk through the door. And it just continued. And in the year that I stayed in general membership before I went up and started moving up towards through leadership, um, and got to a point where I wanted to be, a full time missionary. I wanted to work my way toward, a Walamu. Um, I came in as a full time missionary, and she said to the church, she said, because mostly brothers go to security, they go to landscape, they go to building maintenance, they go to the brothers things, and my Y chromosome is capitalized, and so that X chromosome is real little, but in that space, she saw something in me that was different. Where being mothered, she said, "No, he's coming to the youth program. We have never asked." And I remember that night, and it changed the night that changed my life. We have never asked you for anybody, but we want him. And so in that fight, you know what I mean, it was clear in how she taught and how she taught me and how I should walk and the things, the way she raised the youth in terms of everything. It's like clearly. And so I represent being mothered by her was a reflection on that spiritual journey that we have to have men that have hearts for our youth, compassion for our youth, and the desire to lead them. And she said, I know I got a place for that one. And so my life is 100% based off of everything Fundo Labayo felt, did, and feels when it comes to, reflecting the fight for dignity for Black people, all Black people, the fight for safety, to fight for freedom. I remember this one. And this is where I get Ajay the African from. She would always say, "We need Africans who are not afraid to take over a slave ship and row us back to Africa." And I would always think that that was for the babies. That was for the babies until I realized I wasn't walking the right way. And then I realized it wasn't a physical thing, it's a level of consciousness. That spiritual fight for your people. That mean and rolling us back to Africa is taking us to a place that we're familiar with. That pieces of freedom, meaning that self-determination part. I said, man, this is everything that every time she inhales and every time she exhales, she reflects all of that. And I've become that experience of everything that she was, everything that she is, and everything that she will be. There you go, my booty.
Yeah. Just
um,
yeah, you can go.
no, go ahead. Don't say
Well, oh, you gonna add something?
Add something.
You gonna add something about Fundi on the bio?
Yeah, I'll say I wasn't like under her. They call it tutelage or something like that.
Yeah.
But just even I'm hanging out with her and my mom, going like just meeting her family. So that was just very special to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. She has a gene where that family lasts a long time. A
Oh
long time.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
A long time. Ah. Sister.
No, I think I kind of touched a little bit on this, but I remember when I saw this question and I thought about where I was a couple years ago and now, and how just knowing that every decision I make can lead me to a spiritual act of war or closer to healing and being free. So, I didn't grow up with a conscious mother, but I did grow up with a complete example of a woman being completely committed to her family and fighting hard, and showing up every day, right? Really being our, and still to this day, I say we have our moments. I probably can only deal with her for like 72 hours is my limit. I was making that joke earlier with somebody else, but because being mothered by her, I took good parts, the loving parts, the nurturing parts, some of the non-judgmental parts, because she could be judgmental when it comes to certain things. And I think that over time, for whatever reason, in the decisions that I made that led into somewhat of a rebellion against her and whatever upbringing that I may have had religiously and community-wise and all that jazz that we've talked about before, I have along the way gained a lot of different mothers in my adulthood. Shout out to Mickey, who's been there, who's taught me how to be non-judgmental, how to be patient. But I've also gained mothers here at the Shrine as well, because I don't, my mother's in Texas, and the other mother that I gained as an adult is in Texas as well. And so I do have individuals that I call on when I need that love, or I need to feel like my back is up against the wall and I don't know what to do at this time. And them speaking words of life of this is how you need to go about it, not telling me tangible things, but first my spiritual health, of how to fight spiritually, and reminding me of me being a mom. You're a mom, your kids are seeing this, so you need them to be when they're 35, they look back and see how mom actually progressed through this time of, like I said at the beginning, that spiritual act of war, getting closer to healing. And so I think because of that, and because I worked so hard, I make choices to make it easier for my children to rest. So I think I push harder in my life and I push them so hard. So by the time they get to where I'm at, they got this, and they are protected and they do understand who they are in this world that will try to make them think less of themselves and not be free and not just physically in incarceration, but mentally, making sure they aren't enslaved with this system. And that gives me hope in the choices that I'm making now as I'm mothering my children, not out of trauma, but out of a closer, liberated mind.
I got a question, real.
Sure.
Let's say for Najum. Okay, is there like a difference between like the spiritual fight, but as you being a mother, and between like you being a mother, since you both of those experiences, right? Is there a difference, or was it like the same?
Is there a difference
Between
currently right now?
mothering and being mothered.
Yeah, like with like let's say growing up.
I'm gonna throw that up for you, brother. Good question.
No, what were you saying, Juanze?
Yeah, just like since it's like the question kind of is broken up. Like let's say, how was your experience? Like being a mother, what was that spiritual fight like versus you being mothered? What's the differences, or was it like the same thing, kind of?
Oh, I would say it would be completely different, right? Because in two folds. One, with my physical mother growing up, I think that being in the organization in which I was in, she made it seem so easy and effortless when she was going through a lot of wars.
Wow.
And so that goes back to, with me, I think that I don't expose my children to everything that's going on, but I am very intentional to be honest with them exactly what is going on. Hey, this is what's going on, but I'm going to let you know this is how I'm going to get to this answer. You're going to see me praying. You're going to see me meditating. You're going to see me eating differently. Because I don't think my mom necessarily showed me that. So when I got to my own trials and tribulations, I guess subconsciously I saw it.
You saw the work, yeah.
I saw the work.
You acknowledged the work.
Yeah. I acknowledged it.
Yeah.
Because, and maybe one day we'll have her on here so she could tell her story, right?
Inhale and talk for an hour.
Whew, yeah, but yeah, because if y'all think I could talk, but my mother, she was battling a lot, mothering 3 children at 2 different age groups, having twin boys that were 7 years older than me, raising children in the inner cities of Oakland, California in the 90s, where she had to be hard and she had to show us our life. And I'm gonna just say it because I'm actually kind of proud that I grew up this way. Our life was the Kingdom Hall. Our life was making sure that we were close to Jehovah. And we had to have that, because when you walked out of 1260 91st Avenue Street and you saw the drive-bys and you saw the orange caps of crack cocaine, and you walked 3 blocks up to International Street where you saw prostitution, my mother did the best she could do, which was giving us a foundation. And so for me, I saw that it was different. And the difference was I wasn't giving my children a spiritual foundation in the very beginning. And so that's why I had to look and see, wait a minute, my 14-year-old is making decisions that I know I wasn't supposed to be making. I'm going to be real with y'all.
Come on.
Something got to change. I have to change drastically. And what I noticed was it wasn't just about moving my location, because I moved from Texas to Atlanta. I'm going to be real. I moved here because I wanted my children to have a different, complete atmosphere and community. But I really moved for my eldest, because I saw that she wasn't going in the way that I wanted her to go. But then I had to do some work within myself and realize that there's a reason why I wasn't making those decisions at 14 because my mother made different decisions, and her first priority was God. And her first priority was taking that divine order that she was given to give her children a foundation, and I wasn't doing that. And so I had to wake up and say, wait a minute, mommy made it look easy, and she was going through all these obstacles of domestic violence and infidelity and working through all these things that we have to work through as a Black woman, but also being a wife and having to deal with all these different things. She still had a solace and peace. And that was her Bible, and that was God, and that was the Christian community that she was around, and Christian beings, and I didn't have that. So when you say, was it different? Oh, it was absolutely different, right? Because I didn't give them that foundation. But I thank God, I said this last week when we ended, that when you hear God and you hear a calling to be obedient, and if I never came President's Day weekend in February and stood on the corner of Ralph David Abernathy and Joseph Lowry at the CVS, and the voice said, you need to be here, not knowing that it was catty-corner to the shrine. Just out of nowhere.
Wow.
You need to come here. You need to be here. And I was with a friend of mine.
That was when you were visiting Atlanta.
I was visiting, and I got emotional.
What? Now,
I got emotional.
You told me about the story. You never told me you were standing on the corner of CVS.
I told somebody, but that's where I was. I had I needed like some lotion or something, and we were going to the Walmart. And I guess it used to be a Walmart by the
on Ashby Street. Yeah,
it used to be by the AU Center, but it got closed down.
Yes.
Right? And so somebody was like, and they were like, well, let's go here. We can go here to the CVS. I don't know why we picked that CVS. It was a Family Dollar right there. We went to that CVS, and I started crying. And I think they thought, oh, she must be tripping. She must have like took something. Like, what's wrong with her? Like, I've always been a free spirit, I will say, out of all my mother's children. I always say that. And so maybe my friend was like, oh, she tripping. I was like, we got to move here. We have to move here. So that was February.
What year? February in what year?
In 2023. And we made that move May 2023.
And she found her way back.
If you watch Seven Last Words, that's what my daughter was talking about. She said, we were living our lives in Texas. Like, we were living our life in Texas. I had the house, the cars, the career, the everything, and I was obedient.
Wow.
And not knowing that was the mirror. Like, my kid was my mirror, was to say, like, to wake me up. Hey, you're not doing this right. You're not living right. So, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, Wazzy, but yeah.
That was, look, you just got heavy. No, and you had to. And again, the difference between, and I'm sitting there saying, it's a level of conscious awareness. Being, you know what I mean? Like you said, your mother made it look easy, but it wasn't the fact that you weren't in the process of you were being mothered. So you were looking from the outside. And then now you're being mother, and so now being mothering, you're the outside pouring it in. And so you're able to look back at the past and say, wait, she made it look easy. Then there's something else that I need to be doing. It's definitely a level of conscious awareness. From being inside to being outside, and there is a major it's a difference to being able to administer it, and I think a lot of mothers who are listening now, yes, my daughter watched what I was doing and was like, boom, when it was her turn, like, wait a minute, why, how did it make it? And certain brothers will always say that they don't build them like grandma no more. They not, sisters ain't built like old school, where you could make this process of maintaining relationship, maintaining family, maintaining community look easy. In the Black experience, that's divine consciousness, for real.
Thank you, Andre, for bringing that.
Yeah,
you for sharing that. All that.
I felt it heavy, so I was trying to avoid it. Like, what do you mean?
That was a good one.
It came out. Thank you.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Now, as we close, what do you want your children or your community to inherit from your understanding of motherhood, not just the material, but the spiritual? What would you like to see your community or your children inherit?
John, I'm gonna
Joanne?
put it on you now. What you want
Okay.
your community to inherit, or maybe your future children? We don't know.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know when that'll be, but just, hey,
Right. Whenever the opportunity
Whenever
shows
that
up
happens.
in the right moment. The right
yeah.
and righteous moment. Right.
But uh,
I
just
know you,
you,
you
you can go ahead.
you ready? Okay. I
Yeah.
know
I'm not
being
ready.
being the 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 executive director of World of Akibaland, being the individual who knows I carrying on the legacy of everybody who had ever put their hands on the development of Black youth in our community, and knowing that need in order for us to continue who we are as a community and as a people, it has to be done. Our youth has to have uh, the knowledge and wisdom of the motherhood that came out and that comes out of the Pan African Orthodox Christian Church and the Shrines of the Black Madonna. Spiritually, to always know that you are God's greatest gift to the planet.
Mhm.
You are God's greatest gift to the planet, and you have to be able to produce all the gifts and talents that God has in you for the sake of making sure that the generations that's coming after you have an opportunity. And it has been pure the spiritual aspect of motherhood that has kept the Black community alive. We wouldn't be here if it was up to brothers. We wouldn't. But when a mother will sit down and it said it takes a village. Black women have come through the legacy and the tradition of seeing children that aren't biologically theirs, but guiding them like as though that they were theirs. Men are playing catch up to that experience where we're saying every Black child I see is mine. And I'm gonna make sure that I from the state of fatherhood, but then I have the X chromosome, so that soft,
I was just about to
compassionate
say
self,
that. You
yeah,
that's it.
allowing that X chromosome to manifest itself through me, so that I could give them that experience. Um, talking about uh, Romani, the youngest. Romani has a need to have a hug. And so it's my Y chromosome is capitalized. When I saw a little brother trying to, I'm like, okay, I'll hug you, little man. All right, come here, and I'm gonna yoke him up. You're right, but needing that experience, it's a spiritual thing, and it takes a village. And Black women knows what it means by the DNA, the core of their DNA, what it means to where it takes a village to raise a child. And so being able to connect to every Black child you see and build those institutions needed to develop Black youth, you know. And so it's more than just only spiritually being connected, but inherit that ability to see all children as a manifestation of who they are, you know.
Yeah. I think well, first when you were talking, I was just saying sending out really an energy of gratitude
Mm,
because you talked earlier about the mothers and even yourself, Joanze, having a mother, being the example and having additional mothers in the community that allow you to be, y'all are the products of that,
hmm
right? So it's not the average 24-year-old who wants to be here talking about divinity at 9 o'clock on a Monday, right?
hmm
That is an extension of you being mothered correctly, you
mm,
pouring into World of Akibaland and being your stages, as you said, you went from reading stories to being Brother Ajay to being Walamu to being Reverend. That is an extension of this community mothering you correctly, and also
Mm-hmm.
Mildred, right? We have to give
Mm-hmm.
gratitude to her
Oh, definitely. Oh,
for
definitely.
allowing you to know that you didn't have a
Millie,
ceiling,
Millie. Mm-hmm.
didn't have a ceiling, right? And so just
Amen.
really truly extending that gratitude. And so for me, I think about what my son, my middle boy, said. Um, you know, he talked about you, and he said, and the way he said it with so much like love, that he teaches us that we are God's steam,
Mm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
that is truly already being manifested. And so I know that based off of the products of you guys, they're going to inherit confidence in their divine purpose.
Mm.
Um, and so it's not what I want, it's what I know. If I continue to mother them correctly, that they know that they're not burdens, they're not going to be statistics, they're going to inherit wisdom that God lives within them, and that they are the steam, they are joy, they are justice, they are self-respect. Those are non-negotiables for them. They're going to demand that. And spiritually, we throw around this, not throw around this word, but we talk about this word of liberation. And I truly want them to be free. I truly want them to know what it means to be self-determined. Um, internally, culturally, and knowing that they do have divinity. So that is what I want them to inherit.
Mm. Beautiful. One of the things and I'm gonna do this, and I'll close out in a few. So those who don't know, STEAM is the children understanding that they are God's science, they are God's technology, they are God's engineering, they're God's artwork, and God's mathematics. They are perfectly made. And every sister that has mothered me while I was getting in my mothering, my mothered me, made me realize that there was, like you said, there's no ceiling for Black youth. And if our community can, and we do this in our community, and more socialize them, that not only we're not trying to prepare you to be great in your own individual life, but God is a God of all things, and God is a God of connected energy where there is no separation with nothing from anything. Always stay connected to your community. Always come back and build your community. Always focus on changing the world in the name of the Most High. And so that for me has been is a motherhood, fatherhood mixed up in there, but I got it most from Black women. And with that being said, any last words?
Thanks. Gratitude. Thank you for sticking with us the entire night. Hope to see y'all next week. Hope to see you, Jawanzi, next week. Thank you for allowing me to be vulnerable. Thank you to the PAOCCs for making sure that we get it right, and as far as having reverence for our Black women.
We're gonna give her the last word and say Ashe.